Can I be honest with you about something? Something that nobody seems to want to say out loud? There is a moment, and if you have lived long enough, you know exactly what moment I am talking about, where you are sitting in the quiet of your own home. Maybe it is late at night. Maybe the house is still. Maybe everyone else has gone to bed and you're sitting there with this weight on your chest. And you are not crying. You are past crying. You are just sitting, staring, thinking. And the thought that comes, the one you almost feel ashamed to admit, is this: what was it all for? You prayed, you believed, you held on, you kept going when everything in you wanted to stop. You gave what you had, you trusted when you could not see. You showed up on Sunday mornings when Saturday night nearly broke you. And still the thing you prayed for has not happened. Still, the relationship that shattered has not been restored. Still, the body that used to be strong is now full of aches and appointments and medications lined up on the counter, like little soldiers reminding you of everything that has changed. Still, the adult child who walked away has not come back. Still, the financial pressure is not lifted. Still, the loneliness is louder than any noise around you. And here is what nobody tells you. Here is what gets left out of the sermons and the devotionals and the inspirational posts. Sometimes in those moments, you do not just feel tired. You feel forgotten. You feel like maybe God moved on. Like maybe your situation is the one he is not getting to. Like maybe you are just too old, too broken, too far gone, too complicated for what you used to believe was possible. I need you to stay right here with me, because what I am about to share with you is not a pep talk. It is not empty encouragement dressed up in scripture. What I am about to show you is something that has been true since the beginning of time, something woven into the very nature of how God works, something that people like you, people who have been through the fire and are still standing, need to hear today more than any other message you could find. God is doing something behind your pain right now, something you cannot see, something so specific, so precise, so intentional, that if you could catch even a glimpse of it, you would not be asking him to remove the pain. You would be asking him to complete the work. And I am going to show you exactly what that looks like. Stay with me. Let me start by telling you about a man who had every reason to feel forgotten by God. His name was Joseph. And I know you know the story, but I want you to see it differently today. I want you to see it the way Joseph must have felt it, not the way we read it, knowing how it ends. Joseph was 17 years old when his own brothers, his own flesh and blood, threw him into a pit. Not strangers, brothers, the people who should have protected him, the people he grew up with, ate meals with, worked beside. They looked at him, and instead of seeing a brother, they saw a threat. And they sold him like property, like he was worth nothing. And Joseph ended up in Egypt, a slave in a foreign land, far from his father, far from everything he knew, far from the dreams God had given him. And those dreams, those visions of greatness and purpose and significance, must have felt like cruel jokes in the darkness of Potiphar's house. Dreams of people bowing before him, and here he was scrubbing floors and carrying burdens and trying to survive. But he was faithful. Even there, he was faithful. He worked with integrity. He honored God in the small things. He did not let bitterness take root, though the soil of his life was perfect for it. And then, just when things were finally looking up, just when Potiphar trusted him completely, just when there was a small light at the end of the long tunnel, Potiphar's wife accused him of something he did not do, and Joseph, the man who had done everything right, ended up in prison. He went from the pit to slavery to prison, and not for a weekend, for years. Now I want you to sit with that for a moment, because here is what the text does not always let us feel. Joseph did not have the benefit of reading Genesis. He did not have a theologian sitting beside him in that prison cell, whispering, "Do not worry, Joseph." In chapter 41, Pharaoh has a dream and everything turns around. He had nothing but 4 stone walls, the stench of captivity, and a God he could not see or hear clearly in that season. He had years of silence, years of waiting, years of wondering if the dreams were real or if he had imagined them. And what do we read in those years? That God was with him, quietly, invisibly, faithfully, behind the scenes, working on something Joseph could not see. That is not just a Bible story. That is the pattern. That is the signature of how God works. Because let me say it plainly, if God always worked in ways we could see and explain and track, it would not be called faith. It would be called observation. And God has never called you to observe him. He has called you to trust him. And there is a profound, holy difference between the two. I want to talk to you about the nature of seasons for a moment, because I think we misunderstand them. When autumn comes, when the leaves begin to fall and the air gets cold and the trees look bare, we do not assume the trees are dying. We do not call the arborist in a panic saying the trees are finished. We understand, because we have seen enough autumns, that the bareness is not death. It is preparation. The tree is not losing its life. It is consolidating its strength. It is going inward. It is doing invisible work that will only become visible in spring. Now, here is the question I want you to sit with. How many spiritual autumns have you mistaken for spiritual death? How many times in your life has God gone quiet? Not absent, but quiet, and you took his silence as abandonment. How many times did the stripping away of something feel like loss when it was actually preparation? How many times did the bare branches of your life look like the end of your story when God was simply getting you ready for a spring you had not yet seen? Ecclesiastes chapter 3, Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, wrote these words. And notice he did not say God is in some seasons and absent from others. He said there is a time for everything, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to be silent and a time to speak. Everything is in God's hands, including the seasons you cannot make sense of. And here is what I have come to understand after years of walking with God and watching his people. The seasons that feel the most forsaken are often the seasons of the deepest formation. The darkest chapters are often the ones where God is doing his most precise and careful work. He is not absent in your pain. He is present in it, differently than you expected, more quietly than you would like, but present. Now I want to go deeper with you because I think there is something we need to address that is very real and very present for many of you watching today. Some of you have been carrying a question. Maybe you have never said it out loud. Maybe you have barely even let yourself think it, but it is there. And the question is this: is it too late for me? Maybe you are looking at your age, 55, 60, 65, 70, and something in you whispers that the window has loosed, that the best years are behind you, that God's plan for your life was something that was supposed to happen a long time ago and you missed it, or it passed, or it got lost somewhere in all the heartache. And now you are left with what remains. I need to speak directly to that lie, because it is a lie, a sophisticated, convincing, experience-informed lie, but a lie nonetheless. Look at Moses. God did not call Moses to his greatest assignment at 25 or 30 or even 50. Moses was 80 years old, 80. He had spent 40 years in the desert after fleeing Egypt, after his first attempt at purpose ended in disaster, after he had buried his ambitions and settled into a quiet, anonymous life tending sheep. 40 years of what must have felt like God's silence. 40 years of ordinary days far from where he thought his life would go. And then God showed up in a burning bush and called him and commissioned him. And the greatest chapter of Moses' life, leading an entire nation, receiving the 10 Commandments, standing before Pharaoh, parting seas, bearing witness to the glory of the Almighty. All of it happened after 80, after what the world would call too old. Let me say it plainly. God does not consult your age before he calls you to your purpose. And then there is Abraham. called to father nations when his wife had long since passed childbearing years and his own body was, as scripture says, as good as dead. And God said, I am going to make you into something so great that the stars in the sky will not be enough to count your descendants. Not because of your youth, not because of your timing, but because of my faithfulness to my word. The enemy wants you to believe that you have aged out of God's purpose. But what the enemy knows, what he is desperately trying to hide from you, is that your depth, your endurance, your tested faith, your scars, the very things you think disqualify you are the exact qualities God is looking for in the vessel he wants to use next. You did not waste those years of struggle. You were being shaped by them. And here is something else God showed me as I was preparing this message for you. Something I want you to understand about the nature of hidden work. When a surgeon operates on a patient, the healing is not visible on the surface for a long time. The incision is closed, the stitches hold, and from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. In fact, from the outside, it often looks worse before it looks better. There is swelling, there is bruising, there is pain that is actually the evidence of healing in progress. The body is fighting, rebuilding, restoring, and all of it is happening beneath the surface in the hidden place away from what the eye can see. Your suffering right now may look from the outside like nothing is happening. The prayer still seems unanswered. The situation still looks the same or worse. The relationship is still broken. The diagnosis has not changed. The loneliness has not lifted. But beneath the surface, in the hidden place, God is doing surgical work. He is removing things that were slowly poisoning you. He is rebuilding capacities you did not know you needed. He is creating a resilience and a depth and a tenderness in you that could not have come any other way. And I know that is hard to hear when you are in the middle of the pain. I know it feels like a theology lesson when what you need is relief. So let me not just give you a truth to know. Let me give you a truth to feel. God is not using your pain carelessly. He is not watching you suffer with distant, unmoved eyes. Psalm 34, verse 18 says, He is close to the brokenhearted. Not far from them, not waiting for them to pull themselves together, close, nearer in the breaking than in the brightness, closer in the valley than on the mountain. He is with you right now in this. Whatever this is for you, I want to tell you about something that happened to a woman I know. She came to faith later in life, in her late 40s, after decades of marriage, children, and what she called a perfectly arranged but spiritually empty life. And when she found God, she found him deeply. She gave herself fully to her faith, her church, her community. And then, at 57, her husband left after 31 years, not for someone else. He simply said he had never been happy and he could not continue. And she was devastated in a way she had not been devastated before. Because this time, she believed. This time, she had prayed over that marriage. This time, she had trusted God with it, and it still fell apart. She told me she sat in church one Sunday about 4 months after the separation and could not sing a single word of worship. Not because she did not believe, but because she could not reconcile the God she loved with the pain she was feeling. She said she just sat there in the pew with her hands in her lap, silent, while everyone around her sang. And she said that in that silence, in that hollow, broken stillness, she felt something she had not expected. She felt what she could only describe as a presence, not words, not a vision, just a weight of love that she could not explain. And she said quietly under her breath, almost without meaning to, "Are you still here?" And she said, and I believe her, she said the answer came so clearly it was almost audible. Not in words exactly, but in certainty, in the deep knowing that reaches beneath thought and settles in the bones. I never left. I never left. That is the promise of Hebrews 13:5. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Not I will try my best not to leave you. Not I will stay as long as things are. Going reasonably well. Never, under no circumstance, in no season, in no pain, no loss so deep that it removes his presence from you. No sin so far that it exhausts his grace towards you. No question so difficult that it offends him or makes him withdraw. He is there. In the pain, he is there. Behind the pain, he is working. And the work is far greater than what you can see right now. Now let me take you deeper into this, because I want to show you something specific about how God uses pain to prepare people for purpose. There is a refining process described in Zechariah chapter 13 that I want you to hear. God says, I will bring them through the fire and refine them like silver, test them like gold. They will call on my name and I will answer them. In the ancient world, the refining of silver was not a quick process. The silversmith would place raw silver into a crucible and hold it over an intense flame. And as the heat increased, the impurities would rise to the surface. The slag, the dross, the things that had no place in pure silver. And the silversmith would skim them off again and again, heating, watching, removing. Heating, watching, removing. And someone once asked a silversmith, how do you know when the silver is fully refined? And his answer was extraordinary. He said, I know it is done when I can see my own reflection in it. Do you understand what God is doing in the fire of your difficulty? He is not punishing you. He is purifying you. He is working patiently, precisely, with expertise born of infinite wisdom until the day he can look into your life and see his own reflection in you. The fire is not punishment. The fire is refinement. And you do not refine gold to destroy it. You refine gold because of its value, because of what it is worth, because of what it is meant to become. You are not in the fire because God has abandoned you. You are in the fire because God knows what you are made of, and he is not finished making you yet. Let me talk to you about something that I believe is happening in the lives of many of you right now that you may not have named. Some of you are in a season of what I call holy stripping. And it is painful because it feels like loss when it is actually liberation. Maybe relationships that were comfortable but spiritually stunting have come to an end. Maybe a role that defined your identity has been taken away. Retirement, an empty nest, the loss of a position or a title or a function that made you feel significant. Maybe the health and the energy and the capability that you used to take for granted has diminished and you feel smaller, less, like you are becoming less of who you were. But here is what God does when he strips away the external. He reveals the eternal. He removes what was temporal to make room for what is permanent. He dismantles the scaffolding to show you the building that was always there underneath. Who are you when the title is gone? Who are you when the children no longer need you in the same way? Who are you when the strength fades and the calendar quiets and the world stops demanding things of you? Who are you then? That is not an existential crisis. That is a divine invitation. God is asking you to discover the you that was always there beneath everything you did and produced and managed. He is inviting you into an identity rooted not in what you do, but in whose you are. And that discovery, that deep, settled, unshakable knowing of who you are in God, that is the inheritance he has been trying to give you all along. Not a role, not a function, not an achievement, a relationship, a rootedness, a peace that, as Paul said, surpasses all understanding. He is not reducing you, he is revealing you. I want to read something to you from Romans chapter 8 that I believe. E is one of the most radical sentences in all of Scripture, and I do not want you to rush past it. I want you to let it sit. Paul says in verse 28 that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. All things, not some things, not the comfortable things, not the things that make sense. All things. Now here is what that does not mean. It does not mean all things are good. Some things are genuinely terrible. Some of what has happened in your life is the result of other people's choices, the cruelty of illness, the randomness of loss. Paul is not asking you to call bad things good. He is telling you something far more extraordinary than that. He is saying God is so sovereign, so creative, so redemptive, so absolutely committed to your ultimate wholeness, that he takes even the terrible things, the betrayals, the losses, the failures, the cruelties, and he weaves them into something good. He takes the threads that look broken and useless and wrong, and he works them into the tapestry of a life that, when you finally see the whole picture, will take your breath away. This is not wishful thinking. This is the testimony of every believer who has ever lived long enough to look back. Every single one of them will tell you the same thing. The thing I thought would destroy me was the thing God used to define me. The worst chapter became the one I could not have written without. The pain I would have given anything to avoid became the passage to the person I was always meant to become. Your story is not over. And the chapter you are in right now, the hard one, the one that makes no sense, the one you would edit out if you could, that chapter is not a detour from God's plan. That chapter is part of it. And here is something else I want you to understand, something about the relationship between suffering and compass. Ion, you cannot give what you have not received. You cannot comfort with a comfort you have never known. And you cannot reach into the depths of another person's pain if you have never been deep in the darkness yourself. Think about the people in your life who have been the most healing presence for you. Were they the people who had smooth, uncomplicated lives? Were they the ones who had never known real loss or real grief or real desperation? Or were they the people who had been through something? The ones who could sit with you in the hard place without flinching, without rushing to fix, without offering cheap answers, because they had been in the hard place themselves. And they knew that sometimes what you need is not advice, it is presence. Your pain is producing something in you, a capacity, a depth, a tenderness, a kind of wisdom that cannot be learned in a classroom or a seminar or a comfortable season of life. It can only be earned. And God is not wasting that earning. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. The God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. There is someone in your future who needs what you are gaining right now. Someone whose path will cross yours. Someone whose pain will mirror yours. Someone who will look at you with desperate eyes and say, "You cannot possibly understand what I am going through." And you will be able to say, gently, without performance, with the quiet authority of someone who has walked the same road, "I do. I understand." And I want to tell you what God showed me in the middle of it. Your pain is not just about you. It never was. Now I want to speak to something very specific that I know is on the hearts of many of you watching today. And I want to speak to it carefully and honestly with the respect you deserve. Some of you are dealing with family pain that is unlike anything else. Because you can walk away from a job and recover. You can move away from a difficult place and find peace, but you cannot walk away from your children. You cannot simply detach from the grief of a family that is fractured or distant or lost. Maybe it is an adult child who has walked away from the faith. Maybe it is a grandchild whose life is going in a direction that breaks your heart. Maybe it is decades of family tension, of dynamics that never fully healed, of saying the wrong thing or not saying enough, of distance that was never supposed to be permanent but became habit and then became normal. And you pray. God knows you pray. You pray with the kind of persistence that only a parent knows. The kind of prayer that does not let up because you cannot let go. Because something in you will not accept the distance as permanent. Because you have loved these people with a love that is somehow stronger than your capacity to love. Can I tell you about Hosea? God gave Hosea a wife who was unfaithful. And when she left, God did not tell Hosea to move on. God told him to go after her, to pursue her, to redeem her. And when Hosea did, when he brought her back, it was not because she deserved it. It was because the love was greater than the distance. That story is not just about Hosea's marriage. It is a picture of God's heart toward his own wayward children. And it is a promise to you, a parent, a grandparent, a faithful intercessor, that your prayers for the ones who have wandered are not falling into empty air. God knows where they are. He loves them even more than you do. And he is pursuing them with a love that will not give up, not because they have earned it, but because he decided to love them. The same way he decided to love you, you keep praying, you keep believing, you keep the light on. God is working in ways you cannot see, in hearts you cannot access, in moments you will not witness. But he is working. Let me tell you about a seed. A seed is one of the most remarkable things in creation, because when you hold a seed in your hand, you see almost nothing, just a small, dried, unremarkable object. Nothing about its appearance tells you what is inside it. No hint of the flower it contains. No suggestion of the fruit it will bear. No indication of the roots that will eventually run deep into the earth and hold steady against storms. To look at a seed is to see almost nothing of what it will become. And when you plant it in the ground, what happens first? Darkness, silence. Nothing you can see from the surface. The seed disappears into the soil, and it looks from above like nothing is happening. And if you are not patient, if you go back the next day and dig it up to check on it, you interrupt the very process you were waiting for. Some of you have been digging up your prayers. You pray, you trust, you surrender. And then the silence comes, and it is too loud and too long, and you start to wonder if nothing is happening. And so you take back the worry, you reclaim the anxiety, you dig up what God was in the process of growing, and then you wonder why you cannot see any fruit. God says in Isaiah 55, as the rain and snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Every prayer you have prayed over that person, every word of scripture you have stood on, every moment of surrender and trust and desperate clinging to the promises of God, that is seed. And seed that is planted in faith is seed that will bear fruit. Not maybe, not if the conditions are rigged. it will accomplish what God desires. The seed is in the ground. The roots are going deeper than you know. The storm that you thought was destroying everything is actually what pushed those roots further down and made the tree stronger. Leave it in the ground. Let God water it. Let the process complete. I want to talk to you now about the gift hidden inside the very thing you have been asking God to remove. There is a passage in 2 Corinthians 12 that is one of the most honest, most vulnerable, most humanly relatable things the Apostle Paul ever wrote. He says he was given what he calls a thorn in his flesh, some kind of suffering, some persistent, recurring difficulty that he could not escape and could not explain. And he prayed 3 times, specifically, deliberately, persistently, for God to remove it. And God said no, not never, not eventually, no. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Now think about that for a moment. Think about what it must have felt like to be Paul, to have walked with Jesus, literally encountered the risen Christ on the road to Damascus, to have received revelation upon revelation, to have seen people healed and delivered, to have preached with power across the known world, and to have this one unanswered prayer, this one persistent difficulty that God would not remove. And God's answer was not a rebuke. It was a revelation, he was saying to Paul, and he is saying to you. There is a grace available to you in this difficulty that is not available to you outside of it. The very thing you want removed is the very container in which I am delivering power to you that you could not receive any other way. Your weakness is not a problem to be solved. It is a place for God to show up and be strong. I am not saying God will never heal you or never restore what was lost or never bring the change you have been. In praying for, He absolutely can and He absolutely does. But I am saying this, in the waiting, in the difficulty, in the thing that has not yet been removed, there is a grace, a sufficiency, a strength that is not your own but is real and available and enough. And many of you have already experienced it. You know exactly what I am talking about. You have had days where by every logical assessment, you should have been completely undone. You should have been unable to function. And somehow, you got through it. Not by your own strength, not by your own resources, by something that carried you when you had nothing left to walk on. That was grace. That was the power made perfect in weakness. That was God saying, I am not going to remove the hard thing today, but I am going to be everything you need inside it. Now let me bring this towards something practical, because I believe in the whole person, not just the soul, but the weary heart that needs to know what to do with all of this. If you are in a season of pain right now, and some of you are in deep, consuming pain that is making it hard to breathe, I want to give you 3 things to hold on to. Not steps, not a program. 3 anchors. The first thing I want you to hold on to is this: God's silence is not God's absence. Elijah, after the great victory on Mount Carmel, after one of the most powerful demonstrations of divine power in all of the Old Testament, ran. He was terrified, depleted, suicidal in his exhaustion. He sat under a tree and he told God he was done. Take my life. I have had enough. And God did not send a lecture. He did not send a sermon about perseverance. He sent an angel with food and water twice, because sometimes what the soul needs is not a theological answer. Sometimes what the soul needs is rest and nourishment and the quiet, practical provision of a God who sees your exhaustion. ND meets you there. After the rest and the provision, God came to Elijah on the mountain. And he did not come in the wind that tore the mountains apart. He did not come in the earthquake. He did not come in the fire. He came in what the Hebrew calls a still, small voice, a sound of silence, a holy quiet. And all the noise of your pain, all the questions, all the fear, all the confusion, God is present in the quiet place. He is not shouting over the storm. He is speaking underneath it, through it, in the space between your panicked thoughts, where peace is still possible. Learn to sit in the quiet, not to escape the pain, but to find Him in it. And then there is something else I want you to hold on to. Remember who you are talking to when you pray. You are not making requests of a distant bureaucrat who needs to be convinced. You are crying out to a father who, as Luke 15 describes, sees his child coming from a long way off and runs to meet them. Runs, does not wait at the door with a measured response. Runs with abandon, with joy, with the welcome that precedes any explanation or apology. When you pray, you are coming home every single time. And the Father is already running. And then one more thing I want to leave in your hands: gratitude as a weapon. Not gratitude instead of honest prayer, not forced positivity that pretends the pain is not real, but a deliberate daily practice of looking for what God has already done, what He has already provided, what He has already been faithful about, even in the middle of the hard season. Because gratitude shifts your perspective from what is missing to what is present. And presence, God's presence, is always there. Start where you are, not where you wish you were. And give thanks for what is true right now. He is here. He is good. He has not abandoned you. That is enough to start with. I want to tell you one more story before we close, because I think it will land in your heart in a way that all the theology in the world sometimes cannot. There was a man, an older man in his early 60s, who had been a believer his entire life, a steady, quiet, unpretentious faith. He was not the kind of man who gave dramatic testimonies. He was the kind of man who showed up every Sunday, every prayer meeting. Every time someone needed help moving furniture or driving to a hospital appointment, he just showed up. And then his wife of 37 years died, quietly after a brief illness. And this man, this steady, reliable, faithful man, was absolutely undone. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, frightening way. He stopped eating well. He stopped leaving the house much. He sat in the same chair his wife had always sat in, and he just held her Bible. For weeks, his pastor visited one afternoon and found him like that, sitting, holding the Bible, not reading it, just holding it. And the pastor sat down across from him and said nothing for a long time. And finally, the man looked up and said quietly, "I can't feel him. I've prayed every day of my life, and now I can't feel him at all. It's like he's gone." And the pastor said something I have never forgotten. He said, "He's not gone. He's holding you the same way you're holding that Bible. You can't feel the hands, but you are being held." That is the truth I want to leave with you today. Not as a metaphor, as a reality. You are being held. In the sleepless nights, you are being held. In the unanswered prayers, you are being held. In the family pain, in the health fears, in the season that makes no sense, in the silence that sometimes feels like a void, you are being held by the same God who counted every hair on your head, by the one who knit you together in your mother's womb and has known you, called you, loved you before the found. Nations of the world were laid. He knows your name, he knows your pain, and he is doing something behind it that is so carefully, so intricately, so lovingly designed for your ultimate good and his ultimate glory that if you could see it, even a glimpse of it, the pain would not disappear, but the fear would. Because fear is not the same as pain. Fear says, this has no purpose and no end. Faith says, even this is in his hands. You have not been forgotten. You have been held in the hands of the one who does not grow weary, does not sleep, does not change, does not fail. And the work he is doing in you, the refining, the forming, the healing, the preparing, it is not finished, not by a long way. Your story is not over. Your calling is not complete. Your best chapters, the ones written with the ink of wisdom and endurance and deep-tested faith, may still be ahead of you. What is being built in the hidden place will be revealed in the right time, not late, not too early, in divine timing, in the season God has prepared, in the moment that will make everything make sense. Joseph waited 13 years in pits and prisons and silence before the day came that changed everything. And on that day, on the day he stood before Pharaoh and interpreted the dream and was given authority over all of Egypt, not a single one of those years was wasted. Every year of suffering had produced something in him, a humility, a dependence, a wisdom, a character that no amount of prosperity could have built. And when he finally saw his brothers again, years later, when he had every earthly reason for bitterness and revenge, what did he say? He said these extraordinary, impossible, grace-saturated words, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." That is the declaration I want to leave in your spirit today. What has been intended to harm you, God intends for good. What the end, my sent to break you, God is using to build you. What the years of hardship have taken, God is restoring and redeeming and turning into something you cannot yet see. Hold on, not because the pain is not real, but because the God behind it is greater than the pain. Hold on, not because you understand what he is doing, but because you know who he is. And he is faithful. He has always been faithful. He was faithful before your birth. He was faithful in every chapter of your life. And he is faithful right now in this very moment, working something in the hidden place that your eyes have not yet been allowed to see. The silversmith is at the flame. The roots are going deeper. The seed is beneath the soil, the surgeon is at work, and the work is not finished. But one day, you will see it. And on that day, you will understand why it could not have happened any other way. And you will look back at this very season, this very pain, this very chapter you would have chosen to skip, and you will see the fingerprints of God all over it. And you will say, with Joseph, with certainty, with wonder, with tears of a completely different kind, you intended it for harm, but God, He is doing something behind your pain that you cannot see yet, but you will, and it will be worth it. If this message touched your heart today, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and make sure you click that bell icon so you never miss a message that God may have meant just for you. Your breakthrough may be one video away.